The internet is awesome. There's so many cool things going on the internet and lots of fun stuff happening. Unfortunately, there are a lot of things happening that probably should or shouldn't be happening and kind of breaking laws, and we're not really sure sort of where the gray areas are still. Primarily I'm talking about people who are downloading music or videos online. Now, what's happened in the States is they've come up with legislation to make it very strictly illegal for you to download music and videos, and there's a number of, call them safe measures, or call them measures they're taking that to sort of counteract piracy on the internet. Most of this is pushed forward by lobbyists pressuring the U.S. government to make these legislations. Instance, the music and record labels in the U.S. and the motion picture associations are pressuring the government to implement legislations, and they did. And the legislations in the U.S. are quite strict and stringent in terms of what you can and cannot do online, and it also maybe allows the government a little more privilege and accessibility to what you're actually doing online than they probably should. Now what's happened is the U.S. has come out with a watch list of dangerous cyberspace areas that are free of pirates and all sorts of bad things. And it basically said that countries like India, China, Japan, Russia, Canada are safe havens for pirates. And they're pressuring their government, the lobbyists, because most of the content comes from the U.S., the lobbyists are pressuring the U.S. government to put pressure on the rest of the nations to close the gap or to reform their copyright policies. That being said, so the U.S. is putting pressure on us, as well as the Canadian record labels and the Canadian movie associations, putting pressure on the government to update or reform our copyright laws so that, movies and music aren't being pirated like all over the internet. Now, whether or not our copyright needs reform or not is debatable. But what the government went ahead and did is they did what seemed to be a responsible thing, and that was get a group of people together to discuss the issue. And that group involved people from the music industry, involved people from who purchase and consume, the consumers, the music industry, who consume music and media and movie players and all sorts of, everyone sort of involved. They pulled as many people as they could. And what they did was they got together, they came up with some ideas and tried to resolve, what the best thing to do with Canada's copyright laws. They worked at it, they polled a bunch of people, they investigated, and they weren't able to necessarily resolve the issue. So the government said, well, we can't work it out. It has to be perfect, so we'll take the time to get it right, keep working on it, sort of shift it to the side a bit. But unfortunately, this didn't satisfy the U.S., our neighbors, and they continue to push pressure, and reasonably so, for the lobbyists are continuing to apply pressure as they are continuing to lose sales and revenue because of piracy, allegedly. And what happened is the lobbyists came out with these crazy facts that saying Canada is a safe haven and it's destroying our industry and all the music and videos are being pirated freely across the internet in Canada, and as a result of that, our sales are down substantially in Canada, and they quote numbers like 7.5% for the loss year over year of the record labels and the companies, and they're declining. And what they don't quote you is that the actual international average for record labels and music industry in that area is a loss of 7.2%. So Canada is reasonably right on the average. And they also make the complaint that Canada is one of those dangerous countries, but for internet piracy. Now, what they don't tell you is that the U.S., with all of their strict, stringent copyright laws and everything, actually shows a decline in the record labels and the music and movie industry of about 10%, which is substantially over the international average. So they're using numbers to support an argument that doesn't necessarily hold true when you look at their laws versus the industry itself. So how I look at it is the record labels and the music industries are suffering, well, as suffering as $100 million movies can be. They're not making as much money as they were. And they are trying to compensate by pressuring the government to legislate laws to hopefully protect their assets. So what I'm kind of upset about, though, is yes, Canada is making efforts to reform our copyright laws, and it's unfortunate they weren't able to reach a resolution. And what has happened was the Prime Minister, along with other ministers, has gone ahead and said, oh, well, if you can't make a resolution, we'll just make up our own way, and here's what we're going to do, and we're going to fast track it to please our American friends, and it's going to come out in 6 weeks. No consultation, they're just going to put in a whole bunch of rules. Maybe they come from U.S. recommendations, similar rules to what they have there, that aren't necessarily right. And this is a big problem for me. Some of the legislation that's rumored to come out has substantial impact on how we use computers and how we interact online. One of the main things that is alleged to come out in this new legislation that nobody decided on at all, just sort of, this is what we're doing, is if you want to, let's say you have your whole CD collection, and CDs are an older, dying technology that's not used as much anymore, and you want to transfer those CDs to your computer, so you still have them, you still have the rights to those CDs, you want to transfer them to your computer. And you also want to use them on your MP3 player. So you want to transfer from your CD, your computer, your MP3 player. Good. Right now, the current legislation allows that out of some fair use policies. It's not really that bad. You bought the right to listen to the music. Whatever format suits you, no problem. With the new legislation, that is said to be made illegal and would actually be a violation of the laws. Another one that kind of gets me, that's said to come out in the next little while, in 6 weeks with that legislation, is the right to tinker or modify your hardware. Now, when you buy something like a cell phone or an iPod or an Xbox, you're paying for the hardware, and you're paying for the right to use that hardware. Or sorry, you're paying for the physical hardware. You own it, it's yours, do what you want with it. You should have the rights to change it, improve it, make it more accessible on other networks without any conflict or punishment. And a number of areas, for instance, you can't take your cell phone and take it to another carrier. You can't use your Xbox if it's been modified on Xbox Live, even though you could be doing it to improve it. So that's one area that really bugs me. Another that really gets to me is in the U.S. they have this, and it bugs me a lot, is if the government wants to, or if a police agency wants to, they can basically call your internet service provider and say, give us all the information on this individual that you have, and don't tell them that you're giving us this information. And that's part of the law, and they can just do it all freely in the U.S. And they're looking at implementing that in Canada. That is a big problem to me. Now, if you're doing something illegal and the police have reasonable cause to suspect that you're doing so, and they want to request a warrant for your internet service provider to ask what your account activity is, by all means, and a judge signs off on it, fine. But for them just to call up your internet service provider and insist on the information without due process and without a warrant should be illegal. They shouldn't make it so that they can just easily do it. So what I've done is I have written an article to my Prime Minister and to a number of ministers, and I've forwarded on. I've pasted the article in this video. I'm also putting links to other resources and quotes that I've been quoting sources in this video. And there's also going to be a link, if you want to send in a letter as well, there's a link to a form template I used and a way that you can do it as well. And you're open to do that as well. If you have any discussions or questions, leave them on this blog. Thank you.